as well. Yeah, so just give it a minute or two. I've had some questions. I'm not sure who's gonna actually join me live, because I know that 2 o'clock is a difficult time for a lot of mothers of daughters, going to pick them up from school and stuff. But yeah, I'm going with my own time, but you can all watch it later. And I've had some questions given to me in the comments and by email, so I can respond to them at least. So yeah, I'm really excited to be doing this. I was really feeling, the need for me to sort of speak out a little bit more because, for those of you who don't know me, my name's Eartha Love, and I've been working for 10 years on the ground in communities all over the world with mothers, and daughters and women and girls around what I call the map of womanhood. So I haven't done much work online. I've got online courses, but I haven't done much where that many people see me unless you actually go onto my online course. So I'm being a bit more public because I want to leave this legacy of 10 years worth of work for others, for the future generations. And I had this woman speak to me and said, unless you're going to speak about it, how are people supposed to find you? So this is me speaking about it because I won't be doing in-person work with girls anymore myself. So I've got my apprentices that are working with me that will be doing the in-person work, and I will be going into another stage of my life. Hi, Laura. Oh, hi. So good to see you. Just feeling the support of you popping in. Yeah, it's really good to see you, love. Yeah, I'm doing this because of sisters like you, Laura, that are going to run with the baton of bringing this work to communities. Hi, Louise. So glad that you joined me. Hi, lovely. Yeah, so I am wanting to leave this legacy for other women to take the baton and run with it in their communities of girls. I actually feel quite emotional when I'm saying it, to be honest, because I need to move into another phase of my life that requires something else. And I've loved working with the collective daughters of our communities. I've never seen myself as the only mother to my own daughters. I've wanted to have other women in their lives to be their other mothers, if you like, which is the healthy village that I keep harking on about. So I also wanted to be there for other girls. And so that's the work that I've been doing for 10 years, is gathering communities of women or communities of mothers to create the micro villages that can be with our collective daughters in a good way through rites of passage. So I put out this live. I'm going to do one every week because I know there's a lot to say, and more questions will come up from the questions that I answer now. There's going to be more questions. It's a huge, huge amount of exchange and sharing and understanding and wisdom, and a lot of the words that I'm going to use are voices of hundreds of women over 10 years, and I'm really honouring the lineage where this came from. I'm honouring the Gail Burkett, who's one of my elders, who wrote the book 9 Passages, Gifts from the Elders, 9 Thresholds of Woman, and A Gifts from the Elders, A Girl's Path to Womanhood. And I'm also honouring the women that I've sat with for 10 years all over the world, and also the girls, the daughters that I've sat with all over the world for the past 10 years. And recognition of all of their wisdom being in these words that I'm going to share. So, yeah, I'm just going to get on. It's yeah, 2:05, so I'm going to get on. So one of the first questions I want to address was from a beautiful woman who I think she lives where I used to live in Wales. So to you, Danielle, really amazing question. How to integrate sadness and sometimes desolation that leaving childhood can bring as you become more aware of the world and humanness of people who surround you and care for you. How to express this grief of a new perspective and realization in healthy and integrated ways. So let's address the first bit first. Hi, Millie. Good to see you, love. So the first bit of her question, how to integrate sadness and sometimes desolation that leaving childhood can bring as you become aware of the world around you and the humanness of the people who've been taking care of you. So this is one of the reasons why I started doing this work, because the sadness and desolation that happens within a girl as she leaves childhood, that happened within us as we left childhood and we moved into adulthood. There's a something that happens around age 10. Danielle, something that happens around age 10 is the fall from grace that happens as we begin to shift from our inner world to face the outer world. Our hormones trigger us to move from the inner to the outer and to begin to express ourselves into the world at around age 8.5. At 10, those people that we've been closest to in our journey so far begin to fall from grace, because because what needs to happen is the girl needs to go on a new journey with the sacred hormones of beginning to express her soul into the world. And for that to happen, the mother has to fall from grace, and then the father has to fall from grace. And what that means is exactly what Danielle is saying here. The sadness and desolation that happens when you realize that the person closest to you that you put on a pedestal as a young girl, as a toddler, your mother mainly, is flawed, meaning she isn't this all singing, all dancing, all knowing goddess like figure that we put our mothers on, that our daughters put us on, because that's all they've ever known is the mother. And there's so much in that. There's the Madonna's cloak, which is the oneness between a girl and their mother. So let's just, keep it to mothers and daughters for now. The mother and daughter Madonna's cloak that is there up until age 3, that keeps the mother and daughter in that space of oneness that starts within the womb, and the recognition of each other's soul that's there. Around age 10, the hormones kick in at 8, and around age 10, the mother is falling from grace, because what needs to come in then is the learning of how to become a woman by the women that you have around you. So you begin to imitate the other women and girls that you have around you to learn how to become a woman. So that's why girls of that age will want to imitate other teenage girls, and that's how the uninitiated teenage culture perpetuates itself, because the girl wants to learn how to become a woman, and she can't learn how to become a woman from that age and up from her mother, because the spiritual quest of the adolescent years and the rites of passage thresholds that awaken the soul during those years is calling for something else. It's calling for the girl and then the young woman to go on their own spiritual quest to find out who they're becoming. So the mother-daughter relationship has to be reimagined It has to change, it has to evolve, and it has to grow. It has to become a reimagined relationship that requires the mother and the daughter to step into the new version of themselves that's emerging through the initiation of the threshold, the rites of passage threshold that is that age, which I call in my Map of Womanhood school the girl bloom threshold, which is age 8.5 to about 13, 12, 13. So Danielle, when you're talking about that integration of the desolation and sadness that happens when you realize that or those people that cared around you were not the all singing, all godlike figure that our little girl, our toddlers, our baby selves put onto our parents. There is grief there. There is grief that happens that your needs integrating, because to get to the new version of yourself that's emerging, which is your teenage self, your young woman self, you need to grieve and let go of that little girl that you've been and that baby that you've been. So the sadness and the desolation is the contraction that is happening because we're staying stuck in that rites of passage. So that rites of passage, that threshold of girl bloom, the only way to move out of sadness and desolation for the girl, for us, for our daughters, is to give them ceremony, is to make a rites of passage ceremony, a meaningful rites of passage ceremony, right? So in terms of healthy and integrative ways, which is what, Danielle, you're asking for, is it cannot come from, it cannot really come from the mother, which is the grief that the mother has, because for it to be a healthy integration and a movement through to the new version of yourself, you have to have the village. You have to have a meaningful ceremony that comes from the witnessing and the honouring of the people that you have around you that are not your parents. And so, you know, if you want to look at possible ways that we can integrate this experience for our daughters or for our own inner girl, is to make ceremony. And so why ceremony is so important is because ceremony is one of the only things that heals the brain of trauma. So what ceremony does is it allows the mind to catch up with the body, with the changes and the evolution of the young person, of the daughter. So by making ceremony, what's happening is you're creating an expansion in the primitive part of the brain that allows for, you know, what I feel is that it's like the child to adult brain needs ceremony to stop it getting stuck in child, which might have trauma in it. You might have experienced trauma as a girl, but also even if you haven't experienced profound trauma, the trauma of the brain staying stuck in child and not being able to move into the expansiveness of the adult brain. So ceremony is one of the only things that allows for that expansion of consciousness, that is the awareness of the new version of yourself that's emerging out of the chrysalis of girl bloom. So yeah, we need to make ceremony, and we need to find meaningful ways of doing that that allow for the witnessing and honouring of our daughters, and allow for the witnessing and the honouring of our own inner girl if we're working on ourselves. So when you look at your second part of your question, Danielle, the impact of the girl's sense of self-worth and identity when she's been neglected by males in her life, right? So this again sits within this threshold of the fall from grace of the father and of the brothers. In this case, that's what we're talking about, is what we don't understand as a culture is the journey of the building of the sense of self. So when you're talking here about self-worth and identity, self-worth and identity is built up during the journey from the beginning of adolescence to the first blood, right? So the very beginnings of the awakening in the hormones, which is around age 8.5, to first blood, whenever that came, that journey of building the sense of self is where the self-worth and the identity is set by the experiences that you're having around you. So you can see here that's what's happening is that the what our culture doesn't understand is how entwined the journey of the hormones are to the journey of the sense of self, and the journey of self-worth, the journey of identity, and the journey of how we built our sense of self from the experiences that we had around us when we were trying to express our soul into the world. Yes, Laura, yeah, ceremony heals trauma. I know it's so profound when we realize how much it affects the unconscious parts of our brain that need to be the unconscious, the subconscious, right, needs to be brought to the light. So the healing of the psyche, the healing of the brain, and the expansion that comes from that. And ceremony is making conscious the unconscious. So yeah, this journey of like building the sense of self, you know, if we had unhealthy masculines around us during that building of the sense of self through the hormones, we are going to have a contraction in our ability to be aware of what a true masculine is. And also this is where we start working with the forces of the divine masculine, the divine feminine, if you like, and the masculine and feminine forces within the earth and within the land, you know. And it's like what's awakening within us as girls is our sexual energy, which is part of the building of the sense of self. As the hormones awaken, the sexual energy begins to wake up, and that's how we begin to interact with the masculine forces and the feminine forces of the world. So, you know, a lot can happen during this building of the sense of self, which can be shame, like lack of self-worth, shame, distortion of sexual energy. And is how our fathers held that awakening within us as girls, how our brothers held our awakening within us as girls. And, you know, when we look at the fragmented culture where we come from and how men and boys also haven't been able to build their sense of self from their own sacred journey of the hormones and the testosterone, that they also have fragmentation and from their own adolescent years, and also struggle to have healthy relationship with their own journey of the building of the sense of self. We can start to bring in forgiveness for the men and the boys that were part of the impact that was, you know, our father's impact on our building up the sense of self, our brother's impact of building up our sense of self around our identity as women, as females, and our own identity as a unique expression of the earth and a soul. So what we become aware of is that our inner girl, our daughters, are up against men experiencing the masculine who are also stuck in boyhood, also stuck in baby. So the inability of the men to hold it for the daughters, the fathers to hold it for the daughters, is that they're afraid. They're afraid of the power of the feminine that's waking up with the hormones of the girl, right? Because their own mother wounds, their own father wounds, their own mother wounds are sitting within the awakening of their sense of self. So, you know, the healing that needs to happen has to come from integrated ceremonies that allow the forgiveness between us and our parents for the fact that they were doing the best that they can from their own wounding around that, you know, the inability that they've had to cross the thresholds of becoming a man or of becoming a woman, our mothers and our fathers. So this is the work that I've been doing, is that we need to call ourselves home. We need to call ourselves home from that fragmentation that happened in our girlhood around the parenting that we had and the culture that we've been brought up in. And something really profound that I understand from my shamanic training that I'm going to explain to you now, to limit the mother and daughter wound that can happen at adolescence, and also the father and daughter wound that can happen at adolescence, because you're not necessarily going to be able to give rites of passage ceremonies to your daughters. But one thing I will want to share with you is the power of the mother and the daughter bond that happens during conception, and then while the daughter and the mother are one, when the mother is pregnant, that journey of oneness that exists between you and your daughter, or you and your mother, that began when you were in your mother's womb, is the awareness of each other's soul. So the ceremony of incarnating into your mother, or your daughter incarnating into you and being in the oneness with you in the womb, is the recognition of each other's soul. And in the traditions that I'm trained in, one of the things that they tell us, as what the shamans tell us about their villages, is that they know, even when they're adult, that it's the mother that can call you home. So they still ask their mother when they're feeling fragmented, or when they've got some of these wounds coming up from their own girlhood or their boyhood for the men, they ask their mother to call them home. How beautiful is that? So they recognize, our soul recognizes our mother's voice. And that might be a little bit triggering for those of you who might have had a difficulty with your own mother, but that's a whole other story. In terms of like the health of a mother and daughter wound, the mothers need to recognize, I needed to recognize that for the rest of our lives, my voice calls my daughter home. My mother's voice calls me home, right? Because we recognized each other's soul in the womb. And the womb is the portal of death and rebirth that we incarnated into. And then the bigger womb is the womb of Mother Earth, right? So Mother Earth is always calling us home. Pachamama is always calling us home. But also, if we're empowered and we have awareness of our daughter's soul, or our mother's soul, mother has awareness of our soul, we can call them home. So for those of you who've got daughters, if your daughter's going through something, and actually this, Juliet, might address your question, even when our daughters are adults, so one of my daughters is 20 and one's 17, even my daughter's left home, right? I'm aware that my voice calls her home. So if I know she's going through something, and she's experiencing some fragmentation, right? So she's, you know, my elder daughter had something recently with her horse. Her horse is her soulmate, right? And I sat in ceremony, lit my candle, came home to myself, went into the silence and the stillness, and called my daughter home. I said to my daughter's name, which I won't say on Facebook, come home. Come home. It's okay. Come home. Just come home into your heart and love yourself. I call you home. I call you home. Just come back, because I knew that she was experiencing such stress that she was coming out of her body into disassociation. So I called her home. I talked to her soul and I called her home, right? So even when our daughters are adults, so if I'm healing myself, which I'm always doing, and something comes up for me around my parenting. So this goes back to Juliet's question, and also in a way addresses, Anna, your question about celebrating girls and your own wounds, is that if I'm healing my wounding, right, and something comes up to me where I suddenly wake up to the fact that I traumatized my girls, because even though I parented from a level of consciousness that was from years of doing inner work, right? Because obviously I'm on my spiritual journey, my path of healing. I know I made mistakes because of the imperfection and also the perfection of living in a separated culture, and a culture that does not recognize rites of passage. So I can then make a rites of passage ceremony where I can become aware of the fragmentation within me that's caused trauma to my daughters. So I sit with that, and instead of going into victim and going, shit, I made a right mess of that, I will sit and I will call my daughter home, and I will call myself home. So I will make a ceremony, light a candle, lay down some offerings for my relationship with my daughter, my mother and daughter relationship, lay some flowers down, buy some roses, light a candle, and pray for devotion to my path as a mother and to my path of as a woman on a journey. And I will make a ceremony of forgiveness for myself. Ho'oponopono, I love you. Please forgive me. I forgive you. I'm sorry. Thank you. The Ho'oponopono Hawaiian prayer, for those of you who don't know it, you can look it up. I make a ceremony of forgiveness, and I call my daughters home. I say, forgive me. I know not what I do. I am on a journey of realization and healing, and I call you home from that fragmentation. I love you. I love you. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. And I use my voice, which is the voice of my soul, to call my daughters back home into their hearts so they can return to wholeness, so they can integrate that experience that I had with them. I'm not going to say that I caused their trauma. I'm going to say that what I experienced from a level of consciousness that I was in, I could only do more on the outer than what I had on the inner. And as we're on a journey of evolution, integration and expansion, now I've reached a new version of myself and initiated myself into across another threshold. I can see the mistakes I made in my mothering rites of passage. I can see it clearly. So I work with that. I call them home and I call myself home. And it has a dramatic effect of healing on my family and on my family line. It heals ancestral wounding, carried over and given to my daughters. And it also goes into the future and does destiny retrievals and allows me to reach forward into the future in the destined relationship that I'm meant to have with my daughters, soul, not just as a mother daughter, soul to soul, the reason why they incarnated to me in the first place, and to come back into right relationship of like honoring that contract of why they incarnated to me and what I'm here to hold within myself for our journey as women, and to still go through that rites of passage that we never made it through as mothers and daughters when they reached womanhood is, so I think this addresses the Anna's question about like not being able to celebrate your daughter because of your own wounding. It's like the journey is ongoing, it's a journey of evolution, and to know that this contraction that we get stuck in the old version of ourselves because we can't let our childhood die because we don't have rites of passage ceremony that allows us to move into the new version of ourselves, that we can do that at any point. We can go back and do that. I can go back now as a 51-year-old menopausal woman to my 35-year-old mothering self, forgive her, and and initiate myself and my daughters again through healing that family trauma and reaching into the future and staying aligned with the reason why I'm their mother from the place of empowerment, because that's what our daughters need, right? So Louise, it's good to hear your comment. Beautiful. I will be doing this for sure for all three of them. Yeah. So what I want to say next is the recognition that for mothers is that we cannot be the mentors for our daughters, our teenage daughters, to be initiated into adulthood. We can hold space for them. We can give them wisdom as their mother, but we cannot um, we cannot give them the rites of passage that they need. What we have to do to help them, what we have to do is sort of doula them over the threshold of girl to woman, right? But we have to recognize our role as mothers. We've got the other mothers who have the role of initiating our girls, which is our grief because we don't have it in our culture. But as mothers, what we have to do is we have to work on ourselves, right? What we have to do is adjust ourselves to the new relationship that we're going to have with our daughters when they get to the other side, right? And that is our initiation for that we can give them. Because if we stay stuck in our mother, if we don't let our mother selves die and experience the rites of passage of moving into the next phase, which is our daughters becoming teenagers and us moving out of mothering into towards midlife, is that we will not be able to doula them, give birth, help our daughters give birth to themselves as a woman. So we have to pull ourselves right back. We have to let them go. Yeah, not like, physically, but like we have to come home to ourselves and go, where is it in me? Where are the parts of me that aren't home, that I haven't healed, that's going to stop my daughter being able to go on her spiritual quest of her teenage years? What fears do I have? What am I projecting? So if you had a really crazy teenage years and went completely wild and like, almost killed yourself, substance abuse, whatever it was, you need to heal that in yourself so that you don't project onto your daughter. Even if your daughter goes down that road, and I've had to face that, is to not project your fears and not project your own teenagers onto your daughters, but also to find in your heart the new version of yourself, your destiny as their mother, that is going to be able to see them and witness them as the new version of them that they're becoming, right? So you get out of seeing them as the child that they were, and you allow them, you see them truly for the woman that they're becoming. And that is our wound around self worth and self our sense of self that we didn't build inside of ourselves, is because we did not have the witnessing and honoring that we need from our mothers and from our village to help us to anchor in a sense of self before our teenage years came, right? Because how we navigate, how our daughters navigate the teenage years and how we navigated the teenage years was from our sense of self that was built before teenager, before the rites of passage of first blood. So Anna, your question, you're saying you're a home educated mother of an 11-year-old girl, and you want help on honouring the time when her first blood comes, but how do you do that? So this is also entwined with the journey that I'm talking about. It's like, how do you prepare for your daughter's first blood, right? Because the rites of passage is teenage years, and then of itself that I can talk about maybe in the next video. But for now, most girls are going to bleed at the beginning of the teenage years, like 13, 14, 15, 12, 13, 14, 15. And how do you prepare for that? So how we prepare for that is that we have to know that before first blood, there's a window of opportunity, a vital window of opportunity when they're receptive, before they first blood comes, because first blood is the beginning of their journey into separating fully from you, and changing into the metamorphosis of adulthood. Before that, there's a window of opportunity with the previous rites of passage threshold called girl bloom, where we can, they're open to receiving the wisdom, the wisdom necessary that they need to build their sense of self. Yes, so early menarche, Millie. So that early menarche phase is, so you look at it like this, okay? So they're, the sacred journey of the hormones is the awakening of the soul. So the body and the soul are one divine journey of awakening of ourselves as divine feminines, as divine humans, as sacred, you know, vessels of love that are here to be part of this incredible ecosystem of Pachamama, right? So that journey, that window from when the hormones awaken at around age 8.5 to first blood, that pre-menarche journey is so sacred and overlooked in terms of how they become women, because that journey begins with the awakening of the hormones, which brings the body the cues to begin to change. So this temple that is the spirit house of our soul begins to change. It begins to grow pubic hair and breast buds. And that profound change in the body is also a signal from the body for the soul that is incarnated into this body to begin to show itself to life. Before that, the soul has been very quiet, if you like, on the inner, learning to be, learning to walk, talk, eat, and all the things of toddler. Age 8.5 is when that changes, because we have to begin to show ourselves to life, like the reason why we incarnated, our own unique gifts that we're here to give. And it's so tied in for women with bleeding, that. So it's what they say when people say, oh, do you know your soul's purpose? What is your soul's purpose? It's like totally woven into the journey of becoming a woman. Obviously, is so tied into our path of bleeding, because that hormonal journey is like our blood begins to show us how to interact with the world, with the unique essence that we have been given. Me expressing Eartha, and I've even got an identical twin sister, for those of you that know Hannah. We're so similar, but she's not Eartha. Like, I'm not Hannah. Like, we're identical, but I've got my own unique expression of our soul, and she's got her own unique expression. And so, how I interacted um, during those years before First Blood with the world around me was determined by my own unique essence. My whole journey, my sacred journey of hormones, was trying to show the world my unique essence. Yeah, I was trying to give of my soul's journey to life. So I was beginning to express who I truly was. Yeah, that's the signal that the hormones give to the soul. So you go through this process of the ebb and the flow, of the hormones. The dance of the hormones before blood is erratic. There's no blood yet, but there's the ovulating, and there's the as what would be bleeding, the drops and also the highs, the ebbs and also the flows. And during the ebbs is the grief, that Danielle, your question was, I was talking to a minute ago, is the grief, is the door slamming. So if you've got daughters and they're doing door slamming, tears, they don't know why they're crying, they've got anxiety, or when you were a girl and you remember those moments, that is the grief of that rites of passage. That is the need for a ceremony that goes, okay, you're changing. You need to let go of being a baby, because your hormones are taking you to becoming a woman. And that is going to be the sacred bleed that shows you that your childhood has died and that your womanhood has arrived. So we're going to prepare for that. You can let go. It's okay. I love you. I'm here. Just let go and make a ceremony. Allow them to be in rage. Allow them to be expressing all of these negative emotions. Yeah, because that is the rites of passage ceremony manifesting. And what we have to do is recognize it and design a beautiful way of them letting go, like with the river, make a little boat, put a candle in it, let it go down the river. Even I do with girls, throw a toy that they had into the, like a cuddly toy, it's quite a strong one, but they need that, right? And that's what we have to watch as mothers, which is probably what a lot of us had in our wounding around our own mother, around menarche, is that they were afraid of the power that was emerging, right? So they didn't want to go to those edges. They didn't want to see us go to those edges, right? So those edges of feeling the inner death that's happening as you move from child to adult, for the inner death that's happening when our hormones are just showing us to let go, and that's why we're crying and we don't know why. And it's like, you know, I do things where I take the girls by themselves and we'll throw a toy into the fire or a drawing that they did when they were little and say, release it, you know, let go, it's okay, there's this new version of yourself coming. To get there, you need to let go of your baby self, but you've got her in your heart forever, but your body's changing and you need to step over, because you can't behave like a baby when you're in a girl's a young woman's body. And then on the opposite of that is the ovulation, which is the journey of um, being all that you came here to be. So the expression of yourself as a girl, which is where the feelings of shame, lack of self-worth come in, is that we weren't, whenever we tried to express ourselves in our own unique way, we were shut down. And that is so tied in with blood. That's so tied in with hormones. So you can start to see, okay, these are the signals that my daughter needs me to prepare for her coming menarche ceremony. I need to get out of the way of this new version of herself that's coming. I need to show her that I trust her, that she knows how to navigate her journey to womanhood, because she is expressing this incredible being that she is when she would be ovulating. The me, the like show off, you know, the one who's like bolshy, the one who's like super shy, whatever it is that we expressed, or our girl, this hypersensitive one. That's all the clues to our soul. That's all the clues to who we're becoming, right? And who we are trying to find when we get to the teenage years. So that journey of first blood, the preparation for that is the journey of you as the mother going deep within and calling yourself home and preparing yourself with absolute devotion and forgiveness to yourself as a mother, to allow her to go into the dark night of the soul that's coming when first blood hits. When first blood hits, everything regulates to 28-day cycle, the ebb and the flow, and then you've got a year before it anchors in, and then she's away. She's on her dark night of the soul. That threshold of first blood needs honoring with a menarche ceremony. But I'm going to say here, the point of early menarche, Millie, is to witness, to see and honor your girl without the filters of seeing them as a baby. That means doing your inner work, but also to recognize that your daughter might not want a menarche ceremony in the way that you think she needs one, right? Because what I can see is, bless the women that are doing menarche ceremonies for girls, because I've been there and done that. And what I realized from working with hundreds of girls all over the world is that you cannot give them a menarche ceremony that it's just okay, we're going to do it this way, you know, okay, flower crown, you know, singing to them, drumming to them, which is super beautiful, and some girls might love that, but not all girls will. The thing to creating meaningful rites of passage is that that girl has been seen for who she is. She is getting witnessed for who she is, not for what we think menarche needs. And that's really vital, because if the girl doesn't feel witnessed and honored during her rites of passage ceremony, it's going to be more detrimental to her. So, you know, it's a tricky one, because it actually requires the village, because the people who can see your daughter, the people who could see us, weren't our mothers. They're not us. We're not the ones who can truly see our daughters. It's the other women of the village that can truly see our daughters, the empowered women, I mean. And that's what allows the girl to be witnessed and honoured, and actually helps her to have the mirror reflected on the outer so she can see herself. Because that is what rites of passage is, when a young person has the witnessing and honouring that helps them to really see themselves. Because that's the only way that we can see ourselves, is through rites of passage ceremony, which goes back to what I said earlier about how rites of passage ceremony heals the brain from trauma. So what I do suggest in my programs, I do programs for mothers and daughters. What I suggest, if we cannot have that in the way that we know is necessarily what they have in a healthy culture, is that we can create a meaningful ceremony between us as a mother and daughter, to a ceremony of sitting around the fire together and saying what we need to say to each other. And if there's any other women in your community that will witness that for you and your daughter, that's really powerful. But if you don't have have women to witness it for you, you can always have the trees and the flowers and the mountains and the oceans and the beach to witness it. So go out in nature, sit with your daughter, light a fire between you, and put whatever you want to into the fire, and speak of what needs to be let go of. Ask for forgiveness, say what you need to say, apologize for the mistakes, but not from a place of victim, from a place of like, we're doing this so we can both move on, we can both step across this threshold together and reimagine our relationship as mother and daughter. That's the most powerful ceremony that mothers and daughters can do together if they don't have a community that can give them the rites of passage necessary. Because what you have to realize is that as your daughter changes and grows and moves through these two rites of passage, there's 3 rites of passage thresholds that your daughter's going to cross, that we crossed as girls. Girl bloom around age 8.5 to 12, first blood whenever that comes, and first flight, which is the moment you left home. And if we don't have a rites of passage communities that can hold that for us, we have to find these meaningful ceremonies that we can do with our daughter. Because just before first blood, she's building her sense of self. The moment first blood comes, she is away. Like, that's it. That's the moment where the holy river is activated within her. So when I'm talking about the holy river, I'm talking about everything, right? Your sexual energy, your nervous system, the core of your being, your heart, everything that is your own life force that flows through you begins to flow towards the journey to the ocean of adulthood, right? So the moment first blood comes, we were off on that holy river. Our daughters are off on that holy river, and you're on your own. You're on your own. And teenage girls, bless their hearts, think that they've got their peer groups on that journey with them. And sort of, well, they haven't, because we're not a healthy culture. So what's happening in the teen culture is that they are trying to initiate themselves. It's like a journey of self-initiation together. And they're together in their dark night of the soul, in their spiritual quest to find out who they're becoming when they reach adulthood. And they're trying to go on this initiatory journey together as best friends, as a peer group. But what's lacking there is the elders. The elders of the community should be on the periphery. They should be holding space for those teenage girls to come and check in with them, right? Because they would do if they had them, right? They want mentors. Their inner girl wants mentors. Their inner girl is looking to the other women, to see them. They want that sense of belonging. right? There's a grief there because there's no elders that can see them. So what they're trying to do is see each other, right? They're trying to see themselves through social media. They're trying to see themselves through TikTok, because they haven't got the elders that can see them and allow their sense of self to be anchored in and then to go on that huge inner journey that is the journey of the dark night of the soul of the teenage years, where they're on their own in their inner psyche, in their inner world, right? It's a journey of the subconscious, the teenage years. It's the journey of the psyche. And how that was held pre-menarche is how that meant the first blood threshold is the doorway, the gateway to the journey on the holy river of their own life force, of their own sexual energy, of their own what they come here to give to the world, their journey, right? So that's why I'm saying, prepare yourselves pre-menarche for the menarche ceremony. And then have something, even if, like my daughter, for her menarche ceremony, she climbed a tree and lying in the tree like a leopard or something, crying her eyes out that she didn't want to become a woman. And she'd had a girls' circle for about 4 years and she knew all about it, but she just had so much grief about letting go of her childhood. And the last thing my daughter needed me to do was come to try and fix her and give her a menarche ceremony in that moment. What she needed for me was to allow her to do that by just letting her go and letting her be up in that tree. She was in the tree all day. She was up in that tree all day and she was facing herself. It was that moment where she was catapulted into the dark night of the soul and she needed to be on her own. She needed to be with the tree. And she's always been like that, my eldest daughter. And she needed that time. And, there's other girls in the communities I've worked in who have instantly been like, right, okay, I need the women, I need rose petals, I need chocolate cake, I need to be sung to, and they're like reveling in it because that's the way that they need to be seen. And actually, that was 10 years ago. What I realize now that those girls who really wanted that, they wanted all the rose petals and the flowers and the gifts and everything. They're the girls that are now, they're like 20, 21, they're running girls' circles themselves. They're not just their own, they're running their own women's circles, but they're also holding circles for the younger girls. They're so in it, right? That's the regeneration of culture that happens through the Map of Womanhood girls circles, is that a lot of those older girls are now starting to hold circles for younger girls, right? Which is when we think of ourselves as women and mothers, is what we actually, it's like, oh my God, if we'd have had that, right? If we'd have had a circle of, as a girl, and a circle of empowered young women around us as that we could emulate, that we could role model, how it would have been different for us. So, and then there's other girls that, don't want that. Some of the girls said to me, we don't want that. We want to have, so they were like, we don't want to be with the women anymore. Their menarche ceremony was saying to us, the women of their community, we don't want a menarche ceremony. We want to go and be with the men and the boys. We want to go and do what the men and the boys are doing. So off they went up on the mountain with a compass, trying to navigate across the hills. That was there. And we had to witness and honor that, because that was them feeling themselves, feeling their soul, and feeling the journey we were going on into the dark night of their soul, which is a journey, it's a deep dive to find your wholeness. Who are you without everything you've been told so far by your mother, by your father, and by your community? That's the purpose of the teenage years. So what they needed was for us to go, yes, of course you need to be with the men and the boys. We see that, we witness that, and we honor that, and give them their torch and give them their sleeping bag and wave them off and sing them away, because those aren't the girls that they've got another soul mission, right? And the worst thing we could have done as the community of women was say, no, no, you need to come over here. We're giving you a rites of passage ceremony. Sorry, no, we're not listening. We're going to give you a rites of passage ceremony. You need to come here because we feel you need to have a flower crown. We feel you need to have this. You know, it's like, that is not a rites of passage ceremony. A rites of passage ceremony is finding ways to witness and honor our youth, because what they're feeling is the edge of death of who they were before, the child, and the expansion into the resurrection of themselves as the woman that they're becoming. And what they need, what meaningful rites of passages, is having that witnessed and honored. So, you know, when it comes to the dying of themselves, that needs some kind of marker or some kind of like recognition that if they're acting out, so teenagers, you know, trying on lots of different identities, you know, taking it right to the edge, risk taking, you know, drugs, alcohol, that's them, because they can feel that edge of their inner death. They know something's dying and they cannot, because we don't have a culture that recognizes it, they don't understand what's happening to them. We're expected to just to get on with it and become an adult without any holding, you know. So we're feeling this massive death, and it's giving us anxiety as teenagers. It's giving us fear. It's giving us sadness. It's giving us, you know, trauma, because we don't have a culture that's like, it's okay, you're experiencing the death of your child, you need to let her go, it's okay, just grieve, she's going, she'll always be in your heart, but you cannot carry her over into the expansion, and find ways for them to feel the expansion of themselves, and they'll go back into the dark night and they'll come back up. And it's the journey of the holy river, where sometimes they'll be under the water in the holy river trying to find themselves in their psyche. Sometimes they'll be coming up for air, and those are the moments where we'll be like, you've got this, you're doing really well, like, you're amazing, we see you, you know, and making ceremony, yeah, anchoring it in. So whenever we have an inner shift, whenever we have an inner change, which is rites of passage, we need something on the outer, a ceremony on the outer, to match that inner change. That's what evolution is. Evolution becomes healthy, rites of passage becomes healthy, change and growth becomes healthy when we anchor it in on the external with a ceremony. So we feel the changes on the inner, and for our mind to align with what's going on in the inner, we have to make something on the outer, right? And I know we don't have a culture of rites of passage. That's what I've been working with for 10 years, is the regeneration of culture in communities. And it's been so successful. Like, the communities I've worked with have been so successful in their rites of passage villages and culture. So because I know most of you listening probably aren't going to have that, is the recognition of the change, and then finding simple ways to anchor that in with a ceremony, you know. And for those of you who know my work, you know I work with bundles, you know, I work with this journey with the heart and calling yourself home. You know, these are all ways to make those ceremonies. So I'm going to address Willow's question now. Beautiful Willow. Willow has done the Map of Womanhood training, and she's asking me she's gathering the wisdom that she needs to begin holding a mother and daughter circle in her community, and how she can hold that container. So this is the role of the women of the village, is understanding that they can't do more on the outer than what they've got on the inner. So when we are trying to gather a circle of women, either to have a one-off celebration of our daughters, either to witness us as we need holding because we have to let go of being that mother and step into a new version of ourselves, or whether it's we want to gather women to start a girl circle in our community, which is my work, right? It's the same thing. Like, the first thing that needs to happen is that those women need to come together to prepare themselves for being with the girls. Yeah. So it's the preparation of yourself as a mother, and it's the preparation of any women that working with girls that creates the strong container for that girl or for those girls. And that is such an act of devotion. It's so beautiful because it means being devoted to yourself as a mother or as a woman of age who's in divine preparation to hold this girl or to hold these girls. And the preparation is how you create strong container for the girls or for your daughter to be able to thrive and grow and evolve and find a new version of herself. So the coming together. So say you want to create a rites of passage ceremony in your community. What needs to happen is that you need to get women that are committed to coming to that ceremony or to that girl circle you've started, and you need to meet with them beforehand, and you need to have a sharing and a coming together around the map of womanhood so you can see. You need to witness and honor each other's stories, because what we don't know as women is what it feels like to be witnessed and honored. We don't know what it feels like to have our inner girl, our inner teenager, be witnessed and honored by a circle of women. So, it's like you could run it alongside. If you're going to start a girls' circle, you could run it alongside the girls' circle. You could have your mother's circle running alongside your daughter's circle. But in that mother's circle that's building the strong container, there needs to be the work of going back and giving your inner teenager and your inner girl what they never had. So for mothers of daughters, you can do this as well, just to be able to be a good mother, is you can go back. You can, in my online courses, there's how to do all of this. But even if you don't go into my online course, just simple things with journaling, lighting a candle, go back to your own inner girl journey of your inner girl, the journey of your inner teenager, to ask her what she needed. What did she need from a healthy culture? What didn't she get that she needed? What was she trying to express? What did she need witnessing? Who did she feel she was trying to become? What does what is the contraction within you now because you weren't allowed to express yourself? What were you trying to express? What do you feel were your own unique gifts and talents that you were born with? And what are those wounds there that need tending to around being able to be your true self? And it's like going back to making ceremony, but when you do this together with other women, you're creating a strong container. If you're doing it on your own as a mother, you're building you're healing your relationship with your daughter, and by healing your own inner girl, you're healing your relationship with your daughter, and you're also healing your own relationship with your granddaughters as well, because you're healing generational trauma, and you're building resilience in your daughters because you're not behaving from your own inner girl and your own inner teenager. But in terms of holding a rites of passage ceremony, even if it's a one-off or a gathering or a regular girls' circle, those women need to have that done that work together, because then what's happening is you're hearing each other's stories, you're witnessing and honor each other's inner girl, and then you're creating that intimacy of a strong container that then you can bring the girls into when you're ready, because all of those women will be on the same page. They'll all have felt their inner girl, their inner teenager. They'll have heard each other's stories, so they'll know each other, and also they will have witnessed and honored each other, and they would have gone some way to feel what your daughters are going to feel, because this is the work of evolution. And what I realized after working with a lot of the girls circles is that the girls started talking about when they had their daughters and how they were going to run a girls circles for their daughters, and that they were going to be like Eartha, or they were going to be like Jenny, or they were going to be like Rachel, which is the women that I initially started working with. And what that showed me was that it was giving their inner world permission to be their own story, because the women managed to make the strong container so well that the girls resonated with the women. They resonated with, like, one girl might not resonate with me, but she'll resonate with another woman. And that was the moment of mentoring that they needed to give them permission to be their true self. So, Juliet, your question, I guess we can also reflect back that anchoring in even belatedly as they express it exactly. So, I've just said, so like, one of my daughters is 20 now, so she started having a girls circle when she was 10, and my 17, and she had a girls circle when she was 8.5, and they had their girls circles for years, obviously, because I was leading them. But I also had done work with the women of the other girls for like 6 months to a year before we started with the girls, so that we were all doing it together, and it wasn't just my voice. All of those women, we'd work together, we'd work through all of the thresholds together, and we made a really strong container. But still, when I see my daughters expressing some of the wounding that I had then, that I couldn't see in myself, that now I can see, and I can see it in them, I can also reflect back. Yes, Juliet, it's like there's no time, there's no linear time. So, obviously, I've been shamanically trained for 25 years of shamanic training, so I'm aware that there isn't any time. So, you know, the cosmic mother is space and the cosmic father is time, but time's not linear. It's a spiral, just as the map of womanhood is a spiral, and it's evolving continuously. The more we feed into that spiral with reflection and mirroring, the more we're going to evolve. So the more we reflect our daughter, we see our daughters reflecting back the wounding that we had within us when we were mothering them, when they were 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and we're mothering them now, they're 20, 30, in a different way. But we see those wounds, we're like, oh, there it is, I hadn't sorted that one outside of myself. You see that reflection, that mirror of you when you were younger, you heal it in yourself. And you can also say to them, like, yeah, it's the same. It's gonna come up time and time again. Because the other thing about rites of passage is that they're huge thresholds. They're death and rebirth thresholds. So the death of childbirth and the birth of woman, or whatever it is. It's also an opportunity for a huge growth in consciousness, because you can let go of the trauma, because your body's going to do it naturally to be able to expand into the new form of the body, and for the soul to align itself. It's not the soul's aligning itself, the mind aligns itself so the soul can awaken again. Is the trauma, it's a perfect opportunity for the trauma to be released. And that reflection, even if you're reflecting it later, you know, you're going back and you're reflecting your past mistakes and healing it within you, and reflecting it with your mother, with your daughter, no matter what age they are. And that is the mother and daughter relationship continually evolving, and how we can stay connected and allow ourselves to continue as women having a strong relationship, and not to have that great chasm that can open up between the mother and daughter of a wound if we're not careful. And you know what, that mother and daughter wound that can become a big sort of crevice or chasm that can create that distance between you, begins with that journey on the Holy River that happens at the beginning, the first blood to first flight, right? The beginning of the teenage years and the end of teenage years being that holy river of the dark night of the soul. That's when, if we haven't reimagined the new relationship we're going to have with our daughter by letting go and surrendering the mother that we've been, giving ourselves a rites of passage ceremony, stepping across and being ready for her when she comes out of the river, that's what creates that distance as well. It's because there's those opportunities for trauma to be resolved, you know, without words, even just by calling each other home, you know. And like, our responsibility as mothers is to call ourselves home for the sake of ourselves, but the sake of our daughters and our granddaughters, you know. So, you know, in terms of like integrating and having a healthy culture and the embodiment of ourselves, um, that's why rites of passage is so vital for a healthy village, a healthy culture, and a healthy evolution. And what's happening right now on the earth is we are going through the collective death threshold. How are we, this is how we're going to support our young people, including the boys here, to have the resilience to be able to make it through everything that's happening in the planet right now, is that they have to do it on the inner. We have to allow them to find the new versions of ourselves, of themselves fully, because they have to face those edges, they have to face those fears. And I've asked to be about a girl that I was working with in a community in Devon years ago, well, maybe a couple of years ago. She's now at the end of her teenage years, got in touch with me and asked me to be a mentor for her, because she's doing this journey with a man in her school who does rites of passage work from Australia. I think he's called the Right Journey, if anyone wants to look into it. And she asked me to be the mentor. And when I looked at what this man was asking for, it's about building resilience. And because of the change, everything that's happening on the planet. And it's like, when our young people face these edges inside of themselves, which is the inner death of their childhood, the inner death of their teenager, the inner death of their baby self, and the fear that comes up, and the need in them to take risks and to feel that edge, the worst thing we can do is what he called helicopter parenting, or you know, project our fears onto them. We have to show them that we trust them, that this incredible journey that they're on, which is so hard, is the hero's journey or the heroine's journey to find out who they're becoming, and that they will make it to the other side. And when they get there, they will be changed. And we might not recognize them, but as mothers, it's not necessarily our role to recognize them. It's our role to let them go and to surrender the woman that we were, that was holding them when they were little. So it's such an epic journey. And, you know, we're constantly learning and evolving. We're so fragmented. We're in so much separation that we're constantly conceptualizing life. And so we have to forgive ourselves for not being able to be what we feel in our heart that is truthful for our children, because we are also experiencing the lack of rites of passage that we never had. So we don't necessarily have the tools. So we have to do it step by step. We have to plant the seeds. We have to just talk to them about rites of passage, even because we are regenerating slowly a culture based on rites of passage, which is a culture of belonging. So I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to leave it there and do another one next week at the same time to continue this conversation. So if you've got any more questions that has arisen from what I've already talked about, you can message me privately on Messenger, or you can put it in the comments here after this is finished. Just get in touch with me and let me know your questions, because there probably will be more, and we can talk, we can go into more depth into the rites of passage. And when I feel that there's been enough shared about the journey to womanhood, I'm going to move on to another threshold. I'm going to move on to menopause, and I'm going to move on to death as well, and to allow these spaces for these questions and answers to be there. So thank you for listening. Thank you for joining in, all of you beautiful ones that came on. Thank you for your questions, and yeah, sending love and blessings to you, to your daughters, and to your beloveds. Thank you. Bye. Hi. Oh my God, you just came in just as I finished a live questions and answers.